Welcome to the Changing Earth podcast with Sarah F. Hathaway, blending survival, fiction, and fact to bring you entertaining education that'll help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sarah F. Hathaway.
Today, I'd like to welcome Lisa Bedford to our show. She is the author of the book Survival Mom, and she has quite an extensive library of survival materials. She's a welcome guest on our show, so thank you very much for being here, Lisa.
You're welcome. I was thrilled when you invited me.
Thank you. I appreciate your time a lot. In this chapter, we're introduced to our main character, Erica, and she's trapped under a wine rack after an earthquake strikes. Erica is caught unaware by this earthquake and is trapped. Given your extensive library of survival awareness materials, what are 3 steps that everyone should take to be ready just in case an earthquake were to happen?
Well, I probably have 4. Okay. The first one is realizing that earthquakes, they can happen just about anywhere. When I was growing up, Sarah, and for many years it was Southern California, and it was just a handful of locations. And now we're hearing of earthquakes in all kinds of crazy places. So I would say just that, for each person, just to think to yourself, I'm not 100% safe from earthquakes wherever I am right now. And then also, sometimes we forget that we go on vacations. We go on business trips. Our kids go to summer camp, or they're over at grandma's house. So there are lots of different times and places where earthquakes can happen. And we just can't count just because, I live in the middle of Texas or wherever. We can't assume that we are safe from earthquakes. So that would be number 1. Number 2, and it's kind of mundane, but consider buying earthquake insurance. And I know that in the survival and prepper, worlds, we don't really talk about insurance as though it's just too everyday. But unless there is just an utter and complete collapse of civilization, you're going to need some insurance. And so find out from your policy, your insurance agent, what is covered. You might need to have a separate rider on your policy for earthquake damage. And earthquake damage can be really, really expensive, especially if it affects your roof, if it affects the foundation of your home, your plumbing. Do you really have that kind of money in savings to take care of those big, huge ticket items, or maybe rebuild your home? So find out, what is covered and what's not covered. Number 3, take a look at your house and see how is it most vulnerable. Maybe you live near power lines. Maybe you have big trees with branches that could very easily fall onto those power lines and knock those power lines over. And now all of a sudden, not only do you have earthquake damage you have to deal with, but now you have live power lines that have fallen on your property or maybe even on your home. So take a look at that. And cutting down tree branches is not a bad idea anyway, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado, or in this case, an earthquake. Also consider the power lines that come into your house, gas lines. My gosh, one of the most amazing sights following an earthquake are just all the fires that happen across a town or a city. So find out if there are gas lines in your home that could break. I mentioned the foundation of your home. Learn a little bit about that because those get really expensive to repair. If your roof is old, if it's sagging, that's going to collapse a whole lot more quickly than a roof that's in really good shape. So just try to assess your house. What could be most vulnerable in a big earthquake, and try to fix what you can. Maybe boost your insurance amounts on things that, oh my gosh, we can't afford, that much money on a roof repair. Well, make sure that that roof would be covered in case of an earthquake. And then finally, just really a practical thing is to put together just a small group of items to protect your head and your eyes and your feet in case of a big earthquake. And those could just be having a spare pair of glasses, or maybe just small safety goggles, along with a face mask to protect your nose and your mouth breathing in, because whatever is in your attic, whatever types of materials have been used in construction, and not just your home, but in all the buildings around you, just think 9/11. Think when those buildings collapsed, and one of the biggest dangers for the survivors was just whatever was blown around in the air in the aftermath. So that would be a really low ticket item to add to your emergency kit. And a good flashlight. You should put those items just somewhere at a bedside table. Just keep those items, make sure they're in an emergency kit. If you're away from home, in your vehicle, all of those things could be kept in the glove compartment of your vehicle. And then sometimes, very often, if you live in an area where you know earthquakes are happening, get in the habit of putting a pair of shoes, closed-toed shoes, by your bedside. And maybe they just are always there. Maybe it's a pair of closed-toed shoes you don't wear very often, but they're comfortable, and just keep them there, because the last thing you want to do, or for you, your kids, your loved ones, is to try to get out of a danger zone in bare feet. So those are my tips.
Those are some great tips. I love the insurance tip. An important thing to remember when you're going with insurance, I used to sell insurance. So you need to really look at that policy and see, sometimes unless there's the foundational and structural damage, they're not going to cover the stuff inside of your house. So you might want to make sure that your china and things that are extra ticket items on your household insurance are covered even heavier, that they're itemized out on a list, because those things can get damaged. Yeah, and then the earthquake insurance might not kick in if you don't have actual damage to the structure. So, and that can be rather costly. I like that one a lot. And then you mentioned the power lines. That's a great point, especially out here in California. We have such a wildfire risk right now that if the power lines went down, we would definitely have wildfires going crazy right now, regardless.
Right, I know.
Yeah, so that's another great point. And then I love the fact, put the shoes by the bedside. You're going to have glass down and everything all around. Do you want to be walking through that? So I really like that tip. Some great tips there. That was good. Yeah, that was outside the box. I like that. So when you feel an earthquake, what are you going to do? What 3 actions are you going to take immediately when you feel that earthquake?
Mm-hmm. It's really important that our kids know what to do and what to expect. An earthquake is scary to grown-ups. It's scary to people who have been through them before. My husband grew up on Guam, spent 20-some years there. And at one point, there was a 9-point-something earthquake that hit. And he tells me about just like laying on the floor of his living room and watching the chandelier just swing literally from one point on the roof to the other. And so even for hardened earthquake survivors like my husband, there's nothing quite like that feeling of, oh my gosh, the whole entire ground under you. You just take for granted that it's stable, and now all of a sudden it's not. So we want to make sure as we walk through all these steps that our kids know what to do and what to expect. But, just the standard advice is just to get under something, the sturdiest thing you can find, and then just hold on. Things, if it's big enough, things are going to be rocking and they're going to be rolling. Anything that's up on shelves is most likely going to come down. Things made of glass, heavy books. And this might sound nutty, Sarah, but in our home, we have a really big metal dog pin. And years ago, when we had 5 Basenjis, we had the pin set up, and when we're going to be gone for a long time, we'd put the 5 Basenjis in there. They were all smaller dogs. And my plan was, if there was ever an earthquake, I was going to tell my kids, you head for that pin, because I knew it was really sturdy, and they'd be in there like 2 little caged animals, but I was really confident, in the strength of that particular pin. So short of having a metal dog pin in your home, just get under something. It could be a desk, it could be a table, not something attached to a wall. So right now I'm sitting at my desk, but it actually is attached to my wall because it's part of this big, huge, kind of a storage thing that we got from IKEA or something. So if you're outside, just crouch. You are not going to be able to run. You're not going to be able to walk. Get away from walls or anything that might crumble on top of you, and train your kids to do all of these things. If you're in a vehicle, you just need to stop. If you can, pull over to the side of the roads, and that will get you out of the path of other vehicles that might be swerving around. And those are just, it was immediate seconds. If you just know to do this, and maybe even practice, Sarah. A lot of times when we physically practice something, it just kind of embeds that muscle memory into our brains and into our bodies, and we can react more correctly when when our brain is just scared to death and we don't know what to do. You kind of go into this automatic mode.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in practice, practice, practice. And perfect practice makes perfect, not practice makes perfect. If you practice it wrong for 1,000 times, you're going to be doing it wrong. So,
Right.
and then the things you had mentioned in the first one, we grab those goggles, we grab that face shield, cover up your face, because afterwards that's when you're going to be breathing all those particles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The classic advice was to get in the doorway, because it's sturdy, right? But they've proved now that that's not a good idea, right?
They've gone away from that, and they've also, there was the triangle of life was being passed around in emails for a few years there, and it was just the idea of, just kind of trying your best to form a triangle, like it could be a mattress against a bed frame or something, and then getting inside that little, triangular area. But the person who put that together, it really was not well documented that it worked. The cases where people, survivors have been found in that so-called safety triangle, it was just pure coincidence that, they just happened to be there. That is not recommended by anyone who is an expert in earthquake safety.
So no triangle of life. Just get to
sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds
awesome.
Like a good idea.
Yeah.
But I think I would feel safer in that dog kennel there.
Dog kennel.
Yeah. So, okay, so after the earthquake has occurred, there's steps that we should be taking. Can you share what some of the immediate steps we should take after the earthquake has stopped? We've kind of assessed, made sure everybody's safe. What should we be doing after that?
Just be ready for aftershocks. Those could happen within minutes. They could happen within hours. They could happen within days. And so just brace yourself. And, your kids are going to be terrified. So it's really important to let them know, there could be another one of these. It could be a shaker. It could be a roller, but we could have another one of these, so just be prepared for that. So the important point is just to get away from immediate danger. My goodness, if a gas line is broken in your home, you're starting to smell gas, my gosh, get out. Get out. Yeah. Even if you have to run over splintered wood or glass, you need to get out of that area. So anything that you just immediately observe is an immediate danger, get away from that. And it could be crumbling walls. I would take a look, Sarah, wherever you spend a lot of time during your daily routine, your weekly routine, see how often you're in buildings that are just old. They're just old buildings. And you might want to just be aware, I work in you might say, well, okay, I work in a bank. This bank building, was built in the 1950s. I don't know how safe it would be. So just kind of be aware of the age of buildings and how they're constructed, and just know, I'm not in a building that might have been built, according to earthquake code. So this one might not be the safest place to stay in an earthquake, but it is better to be outside in an open space and to risk, injury or death from things that are falling. As soon as you can, shut off gas, water, electricity lines to your house. So you need to know where those shut-off valves are. You need to know how to shut off the power, how to shut off the water. And then, really important, you need to have the right tool for that job.
Oh, yeah.
And some people have gone so far as to fix to the wall or to the, wherever that gas line is, that valve is. They have actually, whether they've taped it up or they've had some, managed to just fix that thing with a screw or a nail to the wall right by that shut-off valve. Otherwise, you can come back to a home that's flooded. Maybe the sewer lines have backed up. Oh my gosh! Now you have, broken down home, a collapsed roof. Now you have sewage everywhere. So if it's really important to know how to do those things. And then finally, and this might even be number 1 or 2 on this list, but check to see if anyone needs medical attention. And for that reason, I highly recommend a first aid class, a wilderness first aid class, going through CERT, C-E-R-T, that series of classes, to kind of give you at least the fundamental skills to take steps if someone near you is injured and needs help.
Right, because it could be a situation where lots of people need help. So if you can render help right off the bat, then you'd be better off than waiting for somebody who might have bigger priorities than you.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay. Yeah, the gas, water, and power line, and the tool, having the tool right there. That's a great idea. Then you're not digging through your toolbox and trying to find the right one right after. You can just grab that thing and shut it down. And that's a really important one because, like you say, it can get explosive rather fast if you're smelling gas.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Okay, so now a fictional scenario for you. You're at home, earthquake happens, and your home and your shelter are rendered uninhabitable. What would you be doing to keep you and your family safe?
When you've lost everything, I think that initially the shock is just tremendous. I mean, if you can, what I've always wondered about the people who are standing in the rubble of their home after a hurricane or after a tornado, what is it like to see this? We take to such a high level just for granted that this home I'm sitting in right now, I'm just taking for granted that it's not going to be blown away. It's not just going to collapse on me, like a little building made out of Legos. And all of a sudden it's happened. I think the first thing is just, it's hard, I know, but just to accept what's happened. Because the longer you sit there or the longer you stand there in shock and you're not taking action right away. I've seen people just in shock, in the first precious moments or hours. And that is when you really need to start taking action. And so just by walking through these steps and getting prepared, you've already, in a way, prepared your brain for this possibility. And so the first thing is just to take some deep breaths and just calm down and say, okay, I have to accept what's happened, and now I have to adapt, accept and adapt, because this is your new reality, at least for a while. You're going to need help. It's not a time to be proud. That sister-in-law that you had, some words with, 4 years ago at a birthday party, she might be just the person that you need right now to for seeking out help. There are government agencies. In fact, some of the quickest groups that come into play and have things on the ground fastest for help are church groups. Salvation Army, a lot of times, well, almost always, they are at work and at play, and in play way before FEMA or way before a government group, with all their red tape. So accept whatever help is offered, ask for help. This is also where camping gear and some basic camping skills can come in handy, because your tent trailer might be under the rubble, your nice RV, it might not be able to get through, roads where you have downed trees and a lot of debris, but pitching a tent somewhere in a safe location, having with you a camp stove, with some type of fuel, whether it's a stove that, operates on a few twigs, like one of the really highly efficient rocket stoves that are out there. It sounds odd, but having just that temporary shelter can get you by until you can find something with relatives or friends or through a church or whatever. And then you're going to need funds. And I'm a huge believer in having cash on hand, getting your hands on money, because that is money makes the world go round. If I have a wad of cash, I can buy what we need. I can buy fuel from the gas station if it's open. I can pay someone to drive my family, to a town, 40, 50, 100 miles away. Without cash, without something to trade, without something of value, you're now a beggar. And so, people will probably have mercy on you, but it just gives you pretty much access to things you're going to need to survive. And so those are the very first things I would do.
Yeah, that's a good point about the cash, because if, the disaster was that grand scale, you might not be able to use your card. The lines might be down, or if the power was out, then, all those cards are just useless. They don't have the little swiper machines anymore.
I know. There are all kinds of stories, from people who've lived through major hurricanes and so on. And if you just think, I swipe my card for groceries and gasoline, and I swipe it to get cash. I swipe it to pay for doctor's appointments. We're so accustomed to that. Well, what if you couldn't do that anymore? Right. And there are many, many scenarios where that would be true.
Yes, cash is king.
That's my motto.
Yep, I try to deal in all cash because I hate that little card. There's just too much going on with that thing. So, and you can't use it, like you say, you can't use it in a disaster situation. Great point, too, about the church groups and the Salvation Army, because, FEMA camps can get kind of dicey as far as, like, we heard the horror stories come after Katrina and whatnot of what happened at the FEMA camp. So that wouldn't really be my first choice of a place to go, because once you're in, and they don't let you out. So the church groups.
That's right. And that's also true for Red Cross shelters. Now, worst case scenario, Sarah, I mean, if that's all we had, that's what what my family would do is go to a Red Cross shelter. But a lot of people don't realize that once you check into that, you give them a lot of personal information. And they'll have signs up and you'll sign a statement saying, I understand that everything I bring in, they're not responsible for theft. They're not responsible for just about anything.
Right.
And you have to let them know, when you go someplace, you have to check out, you have to check in. There's a lot of control over movement. And I understand it from their perspective, but if you're an independent-minded person, that's going to grate on your nerves after a while.
Right. Yeah, that's not going to work for me, I don't think. I'd be like, no, why couldn't I go out and help somebody else out if I have the skills and stuff to do that, So, yeah, but I like the relative idea. Just, you got loved ones, you got friends around, make that your mission rather than, and space-wise, if you have those other options, you should probably be taking them anyway, because there's people who don't have those options that need the, help of the Red Cross and whatnot, maybe more than you do. So,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I love the information you gave me on the earthquake facts. That'll get us all a lot more confident when we're in our homes and trying to deal with these situations now that we've seen the rumble start across the world, really, right about now. You have to wonder, is it increased media attention on these things, or do we actually experience them more at this point? And I'm curious as to what your feeling is on that.
I think that some things it seems to go in cycles. Several years ago, we had just a whole rash of pretty good sized hurricanes. And then how many years has it been since there's been a big one? It's a long time.
Right.
Right now, there are numerous volcanoes erupting around the world.
Yep.
It's hard to say. My gut feeling is that it's happening more frequently.
Yeah, it probably accompanies the volcanic activity. I mean, it will go hand in hand.
Right.
So, yeah. And we're definitely having some shakeups, that's for sure. So.
I would agree.
All righty. Well, I want to thank you very much for being with me today. And we'll
welcome.
see you back on episode 21. So thank you very much for sharing your time.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for joining Sarah for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster at www.author.sarahfhathaway.com. If you love this podcast, please head over to iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.